Last week, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan suggested the possibility of a Biden-Xi meeting. What would a successful meeting between the two leaders look like?
Doug, I'm looking at you.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that my experience has taught me is that we try to establish normal communications. If you elevate expectations for massive achievements at these meetings, you're going to guarantee yourself disappointment. What we really need to do is get back to regular procedure, starting at the very bottom and working our way up. We've, in the closing days of the Trump administration, the Chinese and American governments closed consulates in Chengdu and in Houston. We could reopen those. We've ended our program of exchanges of teachers under the Fulbright, under the Peace Corps. These could be resumed. Biden made a small gesture, but an important one, by regularizing visa issuance for students to return to schools when COVID is over as an issue for attending American schools. And I hope it'll have a reciprocal effect in China. Getting down to business like this is important. Then there are lots of other things at a state-to-state level that can be done between the US and China. One possibility, they will be meeting at the G20. They have the potential to meet at the G20 meeting in Rome on October 30 or 31. And there they can talk about coordinating policies to re-energize global economics, which is the function of the G20 since the first leaders meeting after the global financial crisis in 2008-9. Subsequently, in November 1 and 2, there's going to be a meeting in Glasgow, Scotland, of the parties to the Paris Convention on Climate Change. And there too, the US and China have the potential to make some steps forward together or separately, but on the parallel path to helping to moderate the expansion of climate forcing events in both of our important countries. So there's a lot to be done of a more prosaic nature, not day to day, because this is more important than the day-to-day stuff that's been taking place recently, but not the kind of thing that changes the course of history overnight. That would be my expectation for a successful and sustainable summit meeting between the two leaders.
You know, you think back to last week's meeting between President Biden and President Putin of Russia, hailed as a historic meeting, and yet nothing came out of it. You just had two leaders who were both acting presidential. They talked for a couple of hours and then they went up their separate ways. And so if that is the standard for a historic successful meeting, then I think the odds are pretty good for a similarly successful meeting between Biden and Xi. But I completely agree with Doug that creating expectations for some kind of a breakthrough, some major change in orientation is unlikely. What's important is to get the top levels communicating with each other so that in between subsequent meetings like this, you actually get progress on the more difficult issues. These high-level meetings are as much about ceremony and diplomacy as they are about actual substance, actually much more than they're about substance. But without these meetings, it's hard to make any progress on the other issues of substance that we need to work on.
We did have one important meeting in Anchorage between the National Security Advisor, Secretary of State, and their counterparts in China. And I think the common takeaway from that was they were all acting like jerks. We can't expect much at their level, apparently. And what people are telling me is that when Xi Jinping and Biden have been on the phone, the conversations have been much more reasonable than what we saw on display and then behind closed doors in Anchorage. And so I think it's only for the good that we get these leaders to be speaking directly to each other.